is a self-love coach. She's someone that when I got my social media back, was, I connected with her on Twitter and then Instagram, and I did one of her self-love webinars, and it literally like changed my life in so many ways. I want to do a lot more, and like I want to work with you a lot more. Honestly, what it did the most for me was like introduce this like new energy on Instagram that I wasn't used to. Like the reason that I deleted it in the first place was because it was so negative. And like when I went through my breakup, it felt like he was the only person that I was able to like connect with on a spiritual level. So when I was like getting my social media back and I connected with you, and I knew that we're just able to kind of show me that like girl and girl interaction isn't always negative, and actually it's way better when it's positive. So I feel so lucky to have you on here and to just like conversate with you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. Oh my gosh. I am so grateful to be here. It's crazy because I swear I like low-key manifested it. I was thinking super recently about how I really want to be on a podcast, and then you invited me to one and a couple other people invited me, and it just is so aligned. And yeah, I remember having you in my webinars. I do monthly webinars on different topics, and it's like group coaching. And I remember having her, and it was so beautiful. And you've always just been such a light. So I'm grateful to know you too, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. I remember the specific one we did was like the inner child work, and that was like the first time that I was like, wow, like a lot of this dates back to when I was little, and like we don't realize that when you think like, oh, my inner child, like when you think about that and when you try to like connect to it and kind of realize that a lot of your trauma can come from that, it's not like you blaming other people. And I always thought in the past that it was, but like it's literally the complete opposite. So like,
right, it's not blaming other people, not at all, because you have this understanding of like, parents especially, a lot of times they're just people who haven't kind of grown up emotionally yet. And so it's not that it's their fault, or it's not that you're blaming them, but you're understanding like they're just like grown up kids, and I'm taking everything they say and I'm putting it inside of me, and I'm taking it as truth, and then it's messing me up a little bit. And it's just kind of acknowledging that maybe we learned a couple of things that were off in childhood, which is so powerful. I'm glad you were in the inner child one. I remember doing that. That was a good one. I want to run that again. Yeah.
It was so magical, especially because we were able to communicate like with the other girls too,
Right.
that were in it, and like you just realize like, it's not only about yourself. Like when you do work on yourself, you realize like how, connected and how similar you are to other people, and that's how you kind of like grow socially too, which a lot of people I feel like don't realize. Like work on yourself, you need to like, get all you can,
I completely agree. I've always seen like the more that you turn inward and focus on yourself and try to understand yourself and pay attention to those things that have really hurt you and how they've hurt you, you actually very naturally gain a deeper understanding for other people, and you get more compassion for other people. And so like in the webinars, what's so cool, like you're saying, is you have all the girls in the comments, and everybody, there's so many times where I've seen every single person has like the same core fear or the same core wound, and everyone's like, me too, me too, me too. And then we're working on that one thing, and you realize in that moment, like, holy shit, we're all so connected, and nobody's alone in this. And you don't get that when you're just having surface level conversations. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I feel like I can't, like when I have surface level conversations now, it's kind of just like, I want more. Like, why can't we get deep? So I feel like it's important to like really get deep with people. You get to know them way more.
Oh, it is.
Also, yeah, what were you gonna say?
No. Go ahead. You're good.
So I was gonna ask you, like, because I've heard you many times talk about like yourself, like your daily routines, and like even the other day when you did like a whole kind of like a tour. I couldn't think of a tour. You did a tour of your room, and even like little things like that, I feel like can affect your health and like the way that you live life. So could you just like talk about your everyday routine, like something typical that you have, that you kind of try to stick to? Because I'm really inspired by that, and that's one thing that I haven't kept constant. And like I feel like once I can have a daily routine again, then it, you know, things will shift a lot. So.
Absolutely. I mean, such a good question, because it's something that, like, before I started healing and started being who I am today, I didn't have that either. You know, I didn't have something like a way that I was checking in with myself every day. I have like an ideal daily routine, and then also life happens. So I'm not so rigid or so hard on myself, especially during this time period where I'm like, okay, you know, if I miss on that ideal daily routine, like I've done something wrong. But I'll tell you what I ideally love to do. So I like to wake up in the morning, and coffee is like number one. You know, it's not like I'm meditating right away. It's coffee, and I go downstairs, but it's a ritual for me. And so I get really present when I'm making my coffee, and I'm really in that moment, which is powerful. The more that you can find presence in each moment, the more that it's going to feel really, really fulfilling. So I'll get my coffee, I come back up, and I usually do a couple of things. So like I'll journal. I will meditate. I really love meditating in the mornings. I love pulling cards. And I also would sometimes I'll do yoga, or I'll do Kundalini yoga. And lately, every single morning, I've been reading a really inspiring book. It's been a new thing I've added into my routine. And I just lay in bed with my coffee and I read my book. And, you know, it's just good brain food. And then I get to work most of the time. And so work for me looks like making content, you know, replying to DMs, coaching. I usually do coaching in the morning. All my sessions are usually around like 11:30. And then I chill, because I have like a energy drop in the middle of the day normally, like right around like 2 or 3. I'm just like done for a moment. And so I've learned lately, when I have that energy drop, to like just like either listen to a meditation or a podcast or something, and just kind of like relax instead of having productivity guilt. And you're right. I mean, it totally impacts your health and your wellness. Like, I do have a room tour, and I really set the energy of my space so that it feels safe and empowering and inviting. And like every single corner, there's something positive there, and there's something that in every space in my room that helps me to go inward and focus on myself more. And then I love, love, love having a night routine almost more than a morning routine. So night routines for me are like, I chill a little bit. I always have a cup of tea. Sometimes I'll do a bath. And I always do bedtime yoga. And it just winds me down. And then like I'll play some type of music or a meditation as I'm falling asleep. And then other days I spend the day with my boyfriend, and we do some of those things together, and it's just chill, and we flow, and it's just life. And that's really sweet too, and just as important. But I think that would be the best rundown of my daily routine. And then somewhere in there I eat.
Oh, the best. No, but that's amazing. I feel like honestly, it almost like takes more to like get yourself to want to like set a routine, you know, because for me, like I'll want to do it, and then I just kind of like trick myself out of it. I'm like, oh well, right now I'm like too busy with this other thing, so like once I finish that, I'll you know, I'll get started. But I feel like, what's kind of advice you would have for someone like that, you know, who's kind of like almost there, like they know the right things, but like just can't get themselves to do it.
Well, I think the power is taking the intensity out of the daily routine. So taking out this, like, I need to do this so that I can feel good part about it, dropping that, dropping anything that allows for the space of guilt, and taking away that big, like, it's got to be this, this, and this. I have to do 5 things in my morning routine to feel like I had a morning routine, right? Once you drop that out and you shift it a little bit into like, I'm just going to do some things that make me feel really good, right? Not hard things, not things that like I have to do, but in the morning, if you can begin by just like having a moment where you ask yourself, like, what do I need right now? What do I want right now? What would feel really good right now? I think that's the most powerful thing you can do. And I have to take away the shame and the guilt aspect of those kinds of things, right? Because what's the point? Then you're not doing it to fill up your cup. You're doing it because you think you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And you're trying to fix yourself, right? So first thing would be shifting the narrative of why you're doing it. And second thing is like taking off a lot of the pressure. Like your morning routine could be like, sometimes I'm just reading like 10 pages in the morning before I start, right? And it's funny because the whole like I don't have time for it thing is the biggest BS ever. I've done that before. It's not real, right? We all have 15 minutes. We all have 15 minutes in the start of our day. We all have 15 minutes at the end of our day. And you get to pick, like, self-love is like what feels good to you, right? So I wonder what you feel about that, but that would be a beginning space.
Oh, yeah, I think that a lot of us like have it as an excuse. And I mean, even with meditation, like I feel like the reason why I make that excuse ever is, oh, I don't want to sit there for 10-15 minutes. That's like torture, you know, to sit there and try to like only be aware of your thoughts and not get deep into them. But I don't know, I think it's just like you said, BS, and like you gotta cut it at.
Part of that too is like, look, we get really comfortable with those, like our overthinking loops, or we get comfortable sitting and doing nothing. We get comfortable feeling like shit, right? There is something oddly comfortable about it. And it's because most of the time, until we shift something, that's what we've done for so long. And so there's like a safety aspect to it, right? Like it's easier. It seems like it takes less effort. But there's, you know, I like to tell everybody about this, about meditation. It is not about not thinking. And I think once you take that out, it changes what you're meditating for and why you're meditating. And I get a lot of people who come to me and they're like, I can't meditate. And I'm like, no, yeah, you can. You absolutely can. Everybody can, because it's not about not thinking. It's about, you know, becoming more of an observer or focusing on something different. It's really at the end of the day about going in for a moment, right? Just going in. And if when you go in, it's a bunch of overthinking loops, okay, that's fine, right? If when you go in, it's calm and it's safe and it's soft, awesome. Whatever it is, that's totally beautiful. Like doing a guided meditation. I have a lot on my Instagram that I really love, right? And all you have to do, you're doing the same thing, right? You're like laying in bed and you're in an overthinking loop. So instead, you could lay in bed, press play, close your eyes, listen, take away the pressure, take away the effort, and just listen and tune in for a moment. I think so much with like the wellness community and also with self-love, even there's this weird pressure that people put on themselves, right? Like we have to do everything in this perfect way, or we have to, you know, have the perfect daily routine. And these things are beautiful, but when you are telling yourself that you have to, or you should, or you shouldn't, it's not really that self-loving, right? It's more like a disciplinary father kind of energy.
The perfect way to say it. I feel like you're right about the pressure. Like when I was, you know, finding new like spiritual pages on social media too, I noticed that it's like that's why I really connected with you, honestly, because you shared your story and you were like, I'm not perfect, like I still have bad habits, or I have in the past. And it's like being able to connect is so important, and like realize that other people are not exactly where you're at even, and they might like they might need their daily routine to be like one step as opposed to 10. You're right about that. It's not like I feel like it's just about taking off the pressure and just starting wherever you're at.
It is. And
breaking that negative.
yeah, breaking the negative pattern. And it's true, I'm not perfect, right? And like that's not what self-love's about at all. It's about, you know, loving yourself, especially for your mess, especially for the stuff that is not working and that isn't something super super lovable, but loving yourself for it anyways as you work on it. And it's like I've never wanted, I try to always like periodically give this message out of like, I'm not happy all the time. That's not real. That's not human. That makes no sense, right? It's more like I have lots of emotions. I'm a super deep person. I have a Scorpio moon, if you like astrology. You know, I feel everything and I let myself feel it. And then I always come to the other side with solution and I pick myself up. And I am a deeply happy person with a lot of bliss and a lot of inner peace because of the things that I do. but yeah, it's kind of like you just got to start. And when I first began, it was just beginning. That's all, it was like the simplest, littlest things every single day. And when you're really struggling and you're in a hard moment, you're not going to do an hour-long self-care routine. You need energy, right? Like it takes energy to pay attention to yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. So you just mentioned kind of getting started, and like I said, I'm very like inspired just by your story in general. So could you just share when was that point where you felt like you had to get started with your healing journey, and like what kind of like made you what was like the catalyst,
Great question. Such
I
a good
guess, for
question.
that?
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's really important to look at that. So I'm 20 now, and I started this when I was 16. So when I was 16, what happened in my life was I was abusing drugs and alcohol. So it's not like I identify as an alcoholic or an addict or anything like that. However, I was totally abusing it at the time. And there was reasons that I was, I was trying to fill a lot of voids inside myself, and I had a lot of wounds that I didn't know how to deal with. And I was in a massively abusive relationship on all levels, especially emotionally and mentally, but also physically and sexually. And it was literally making me debilitated, and I was getting so depressed. I was having chronic anxiety. My dad is a really big source of pain in my life. Not in the same way anymore, but at the time he was. And he was narcissistic, and I was really, really hurt by him. So I had him hurting me. I had my abusive relationship, and I had a toxic relationship with drugs and alcohol, and all of my friends totally sucked. And it wasn't their fault, but they weren't good friends, you know what I mean? And I got to a certain point where, and it's sad every time I think about this, but I really did land at a point where I did not want to be a part of life anymore. And, if you meet me, you get the energy of like bubbly loves life kind of vibe. And that's true. I've always had that. Even in my darkest moments, I've always been a person who, I feel like I have purpose here. And I lost that for a moment. And that was really, really, really scary. And one of the best ways I can describe what life was like when I was 16 at that point was like I was battling myself constantly. And I had like two sides of my brain, like the intuitive, maybe a little bit like this me, and I had codependent, addicted, sad, traumatized me, and this one kept winning. And that side kept winning, and this one was getting quieter and quieter and quieter, and I felt weaker and weaker and weaker. And it was a really hard point. It was my rock bottom. I definitely call it my rock bottom. And sometimes everything has to fall apart so that you can build it back up and make it beautiful again, right? Sometimes you have to reach rock bottom. Sometimes you have to get so sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? And so I got to this point of being just sick of how I was living, and I didn't know what to do with my emotions, which is ironic because I love talking about and understanding emotions now, but I hated them. I just wanted to numb them and push them away. So eventually everything just blew up, and I was really, really done. And I was tired, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't like I woke up one day and I, blocked the guy and quit the drugs and changed my life. It took time. But September 1st, 2016, I know the day, was the day that I got sober. And I started to really, really finally look at myself. And eventually I blocked the guy and I began healing. And it's crazy thinking back to that time because everything was so brand new, like, I didn't love myself. I hated myself, like totally freaking hated myself. And I didn't know who I was. And that birthed everything. It was that really, really low moment, and being abused and feeling like I had no respect and having no dignity, and hating myself and not wanting to be a part of life anymore, just pure depression. And I just started healing, and then I just like transformed into a completely different human being. But that was that rock bottom point.
I was getting emotional hearing about it because, like you said, like here, just thinking about like that sadness and the void that you were feeling, like that hurts, you know. But it shows that, like you said, sometimes at your lowest points, it feels like, okay, well, there's nothing to lose anymore. Like I might as well actually like start feeling better because like I've already hit this point where like nothing matters. And like I've had those moments where literally I've had to think to myself like, wow, like why, how did I let myself get this sad? But you're so like used to that pattern, like you said, that it feels more comfortable to be sad. I remember texting my friends in the past like, oh, I'm just sad. And then like now when I think about it, it's like I think that was my default like feeling, honestly. It was sad that I just kind of like jumped into it and was like, okay, so I'm gonna be sad today, instead of like, even though I maybe knew what to do, I didn't really know how to do it. So I was just like, okay, I'll just sit in this dark moment. But
Oh, totally.
it's interesting though when you talk about abusive relationships, because I have seen your relationship through only Instagram, obviously, but it's crazy because you can feel that love. Like I'm so happy for you, and like I have been in past relationships where like it looked so glorified on social media, but it's not super easy to tell, but you can tell when someone, like when the person is happier or not. And with you, I can just feel the happiness, and it makes me really like, it just inspires me, and it makes me feel really good for you for feeling so good in a relationship, because that's the point of having a relationship, is so you can like build each other up and make each other happier than not. And a lot of times you hear a lot of trauma is from especially romantic relationships. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that. But also, have you with your with Tanner, right? So with your current partner, do you feel it was like, because you went through so much um healing before, that it kind of was like, I don't want to call it the prize, but like because you worked on yourself for so long, that like kind of you figured out how to have a good relationship? Or did that also kind of build on itself and like have its rocks and bottoms? Not that I want you to like share your entire like, oh, we fought yesterday, not like that.
Open book, you're on point. It definitely felt like a gift. It felt like a prize in a lot of ways. It felt like, here, good work, like this is what you get now. It really felt like that because I was so codependent for so long, right? Like people pleaser, like just getting walked all over, getting abused, all this stuff. And a good way to put it would be, I was always putting my happiness in the hands of other people, right? Like I didn't have self-love. So I get rid of the abusive relationship, I start healing. And for a year, I committed to myself for a year to not be in a relationship and to focus on me. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. And so the story goes, I start really building myself up, and I begin to believe all the affirmations I'm saying all the time. I truly feel like I love myself. I truly feel like I have self-respect. I feel enough. And I'm learning how to communicate, and I'm just getting all of these tools. And right at the end of that year, like I'm like a day before, like right before I got a year, I met him. And it was the most like synchronized, like couldn't have expected it moment ever. And I'll never forget meeting him. And we just immediately connected. And we were at a friend's birthday party, and we couldn't stop talking. We didn't stop talking once. And we talked about everything: spirituality, self love, life, being sober, everything. And we went home together that night. And it started from there. And it felt like, you have done such a good job. You are transformed. You're not who you used to be. And you can have someone like this now. And the same thing for him. He had his own story and his own darkness and his own stuff, and he was ready also to be in a relationship that was healthy and loving. And it I won't lie, it's as good as it looks. It truly is. Like, me, I'm authentic. I'll tell you the truth. It's real love. It's been 3 years, and it just warms my heart up. We have our moments, but there's so much respect and incredible communication, and I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't spend that time to learn how to love myself and to learn how to really be in a true equal healthy relationship. It's one of the greatest gifts for sure.
Yeah, no, that's why I asked about it, because I know that like social media and that kind of thing can make us feel like we're not good enough for a relationship, or we're not good enough for like a healthy relationship, because we see like everything that you see on social media, and it's like it's important to kind of like get that backstory and realize that everyone has to go through something before they can not, I don't even want to say deserve, but to feel like you deserve it, because sometimes we don't feel like we're worth it if we haven't.
Well, I just wanted to say also, it's like it wasn't that I didn't deserve to have a really good man. You know what I mean? Someone who wanted to treat me well. I always deserved that. It's what you said. I didn't know. I didn't believe I deserved that. And there's a reason for that. Like, if you know me and you've worked with me and you have, I'm all about the root. I'm all about why we think we're not enough, why we think we don't deserve it. And so, growing up, having like a codependent relationship in my parents and watching that and watching, my mom accept something that she didn't deserve all of the time. Well, I thought that was love. I thought that was normal, right? So like, I didn't see myself as worthy of being treated well until I took a year to do that. And so yeah, sometimes you gotta fall down, and then you have to work on yourself, and then you start to draw whatever's inside of you. There's a truth to that. There's a truth to it. Like, when you are self-respecting and full of love and you feel enough, that's what you're gonna pull to you, right? And like, Tanner just essentially mirrored back to me all the work I had done for a year. And like, now that we're at 3 years, it's growing, and we're growing up, and there's more things we have to work on, and it's a different level of relationship now, right? Like, we're considering moving, no, we are moving in together, and we're up leveling and growing up, and so there's bigger issues, yet when you have that deep unconditional healthy love, you handle everything with this like aspect of kindness. And I think that's one of the most powerful parts of having a healthy relationship. And
Okay.
yeah.
Everything you say, I'm like, oh gosh,
Oh, I
like
love you.
so wild. I love it. But no, it's true, because I feel like what I thought about when you were talking is like, you know, when you're saying that you handle things differently too, it kind of reminded me that like, if you, let's say, because this has happened to me, like I have given chances to relationships that from the very start I saw things wrong, or not even wrong, just I saw that this person like wasn't on the same level of like being able to look within and that kind of thing, that I always felt like I was blaming myself, because it's like, oh, this person could never do no harm, but what I realized that is that in those circumstances, when you haven't worked on yourself and healed, you kind of brush that stuff off. You're like, oh, they'll get better, or like later on we'll figure it out. But then once you have figured stuff out on your own and you are healing, when a person walks into your life that isn't able to kind of reciprocate what you want, then you are okay with kind of leaving from the start. But when we're so codependent and we have so many issues within that we need to figure out before we can have a healthy relationship, it's really hard to kind of walk out, because you're like, wait, like I need this person now, like now I'm in love with them, how can I just randomly walk away? So you're absolutely right about that.
Well said. It's true. It's because, when you're in codependency, there's a core belief that you're not enough on your own, meaning you're not whole, meaning you need another person. You're dependent on another person to be whole, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to ignore red flags. You're going to choose to, I call it, I don't know what I call it, but it's
Yeah.
denial. It's deciding to only see the good parts. Everybody has good parts. Psychopaths have good parts. They're charismatic, right? If if you're
Yeah.
codependent enough and you want something enough, you're gonna just, I'm not gonna look at the red flags, but oh, look how sweet they are on Tuesdays. And yeah, it's fine that they bitch at me sometimes, but you just focus on the good thing. But if you have that self-respect and you've built yourself up, like you said, it is massively easy to see those red flags clearly and be like, I respect myself so much. Why the hell would I allow that in my space?
Yeah.
It's this, you come to this point of like, why would I allow anything that isn't good for me? Like any,
Yeah.
like I used to live in like toxicity in every way, right? Like it was all things that were bad for me because for a lot of reasons, but that's all that I was allowing. And my life is different now, right? It's like a true 180 and it's like I only allow what's good for me. But you have to respect yourself. It's like being a mother to a baby and loving that baby so much that you're only buying organic food and you're making sure they have the best of the best because you love them so much. You have to be your own baby.
You're so right. That honestly clicked for me really well because
Yeah.
that's kind of similar to like thinking of your inner child. I sometimes do that. I'm like, why am I putting her through this? Because that's when you start to care, is when you think of yourself as like fragile and like,
Yes.
where you start to think like, hey, everything does affect me, even though all this time I've been ignoring it. Like it really does make an impact. Um, I don't know. I think with like for myself personally, and I don't know, maybe someone will kind of relate. I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can be able to stick up for myself in friendships because in the past I had really shitty friends, and I do have to say like they're not shitty people, but to me they just like weren't supportive in a lot of ways. And so now I've gotten really good at being able to be like, hey, why would I spend an hour or two a day with this person who's like not affecting me positively? So I'm good with that. But I feel like with personal or with romantic relationships, it's hard for me to be able to kind of like truly make that cut and be like, hey, this is not okay. I'm like super forgiving in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of that is like romantic relation romantic relationships are a little bit different because you're partners. It's different than friendships, right? Like, you've got your friends here, you've got that group of friends, and they're not like meant to be your equal. They're not meant to be your partner. They're just your friends, which is so important. And I had a lot of my first bout of codependency was friendships, without a doubt. But I think with relationships, there's this bigger pressure again, right? Of like, we have to be equals, we have to be partners, we have to work. And so it can be difficult at times to, take some of those same values in relationships like that. And it's not that you can't, because you are doing it with certain people, right? It is possible to do it, but maybe there's more of a pressure on like what love is, right? And wanting to be enough for love, right? You might be like, I know I'm a good friend,
yeah.
I'm worthy of good friendships, right? But maybe when it comes to love, you could feel, and this is not just you, but this is people in general, you could feel less deserving, less worthy, less enough. And that might be because you haven't seen it yet, right? But you've had good friendships, you've had healthy friendships, you know what those look like. Yeah, it's human. Mhm.
Oh, for sure. And I've also noticed that like in the past, in my last relationship, when we broke up, I was like, wait, all the issues. So I had, certain insecurities, and we had issues when it came to like other people and like, other guys or girls or whatever. But um, so when we broke up, I was like, okay, well, I thought I was like jealous and insecure of other women because of my, boyfriend at the time. I still have those issues. Like I still have them. So I feel like once you get out of your relationships, it's important to be like, wait, like which things are just like deeply rooted within me and which things are just like something that came from the relationship. So I definitely like have done a lot of work ever since then, but I still see that when it comes to romantic relationships, I'm just a little more hesitant about like how I am in them, I guess. So I think it's just keep working on it.
Yeah, well, that's something I work with a lot of girls on this, you know, and I work with myself on this. This is probably my biggest space of growth is like learning how, you know, when you've been in abusive relationships or you've grown up in toxicity, it's really, really, really hard to just purely be in a healthy relationship and to fully be in trust, right? And it's not the other person. Sometimes it can be, sometimes they can trigger something, but you have all of your stories of getting betrayed and backstabbed and abandoned and hurt and all of that stuff. You're the one holding that. So maybe there is a little trigger in the relationship, right? But then what comes up is all of the stories of the ways that you've been hurt. And, you know, I work with this with my girlfriends, even not just my clients and myself, on really separating that from my relationship, right? Like understanding, look, like I've got a lot of pain there and it doesn't just go away. And it's not just gonna go away. I have to spend time with it and nurture it, but sometimes fear is going to come up. Fear just comes up because of the things that we've gone through that we don't want to feel again, right? Like we don't want to be hurt again. We don't want to be in that space again. And it even happens to me with Tanner. It's probably the biggest thing I work on is really separating my old story and really knowing like you are in a healthy relationship that is trusting, that is loyal. And our head is going to want to mess things up for us, right? The ego wants to protect us. And so it has a really fucked up way of doing it, I like to say, but it's trying to protect you. So when you're in that overthinking, anxious, codependent sort of loop of, can I trust? Am I safe? Are they going to abandon me? Are they going to leave? Stopping, pulling out and being like, okay, is this something that's happened to me in the past that I'm just worrying about? Mm-hmm. Right? Or is this really, really, really literal to my present? And it's a very human, normal thing that a lot of us work on and grow on. And I see it all the time. I think I have a podcast on it. It's recovering, or it's like being in a healthy relationship after an abusive relationship.
Yeah, I have it saved. I'm gonna listen to it.
I love that. Yeah, no, because it's a really real thing. You're like, okay, I've done my healing, but I have all these abusive relationships behind me. Oh shit, this guy's a good one. And you're like, it's hard to believe it sometimes, right? And your fear comes up and your stuff comes up. And, you know, usually when you're with a really, really good person, you can tell them about it and you can work through it in that relationship. And there's a lot of power in that. And you get to work on it inside of yourself. But it's a real thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. So I wanted to touch on manifesting a little bit because you brought that up, and it's something that has obviously gained popularity lately, like with TikTok and everything. Everyone's talking about manifesting, and like in the past, it was more like me and my sister would be like, "We manifested that," especially her. She's like amazing. Lately, she's been doing a lot of manifesting, and like she sees it like all those affirmations come off. It's like, this is actually happening. But anyways, so now we're, you know, in the past it was always like, oh, you guys are so funny, like manifesting, you know, and now people are like, wait, actually, I think I just manifested this. Like, so it makes me really excited. But how do you talk about it? Because like a lot of times it's really hard for me to explain to especially skeptics, you know, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. Because like, what if it doesn't for them? And then they start not believing it even more. But it really is about the feeling and not just the wishing. I know that. So just take it away.
Manifesting, gosh, such an interesting one. I think the first thing, and I like to say this all the time, we're manifesting all the time, whether it's conscious or not, right? So you could take, for example, like, let's not talk about physical items. Let's talk about your life, right? So like when I was having all of these thoughts of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, and I was feeling that not only in my conscious mind, but also in my subconscious, what was I manifesting? I was manifesting unhealthy friendships with people who walked all over me. I was manifesting guys who literally were just like, oh, you don't love yourself? Perfect. I'm just going to get, abuse you and control you and all this stuff. And so in that sense, I was manifesting that. Not that it was my fault, right? But I was feeling all of those things and they were showing up in my reality. So let's shift. Now I'm thinking all the time, I love myself, I feel enough, right? My subconscious beliefs have changed because of the work that I've done. Now it shows up in my life, right? I have clients who truly, truly respect me and love to work with me, right? I have a healthy relationship. I have good friendships. My life is beautiful. And so essentially, whatever's in your subconscious is what you're manifesting, right? And I think it's really all about the subconscious, but it's fun. I have never gotten so deep into it where it's like a daily thing or anything that I've been obsessed with. However, at times I've manifested just a couple of little things. Like I manifested my computer, or essentially like I manifested my business. And the best thing I could say and the best advice I could give, and I think this is the truth of it, is that it works like this. You put in the footwork, right? You put in the physical work here. So you send the email, you take the walk, you go to the place, you put in the physical work, and then the universe meets you. And the universe does sort of the miracles and the ways where you're like, oh my God, that like manifested, that was so magical. And so it's actually you working together with the universe. And I think that's like the most magical, special way to think of manifestation. And it's not all on you and it's not all on the universe. It's this like thing where you put them together. And I find that to be really beautiful. And also like affirmations, like they're so powerful. Like they are one of those little tools that we just think are like whatever, that are so powerful, because what we're thinking and what we're saying out loud, right? It manifests without a doubt. And so at the beginning, when I was 16, I was saying stuff I didn't believe to myself in the mirror. It was so awkward, but I was like, I love myself. I feel powerful. I feel confident, like all this stuff that I didn't believe, right? And those things are real today, and they were real very soon. And I'll chalk a lot of that up to just affirmations and saying them every single day. My last example would be I went on a trip with Tanner to Canada, and it was this huge road trip. We live in California, so we drove all the way up, and we went through everything, and it was this big 1 month long road trip, and we came all the way back around. And every single day, we said a few affirmations, and they were manifestations. We said, everything happens with ease. We said, my day is filled with love and fun, and everything's working out best case scenario. That was so true. That was the easiest, best trip ever. We got upgrades all the time. Like hotels would just upgrade us, and we were like, everything was so easy. There was literally like not one issue, and we were saying that every day, down to like just getting the best parking spots. And
Wow.
right. And I think a lot of that was like we were saying it every day, and we were adding the feeling to it. Like we were doing a little dance to it, and we were like happy and smiling while we did it, and we were believing it. And I always think back to that when I think of manifestation, because I was like, that really manifested. But
Amazing, because like you said, sometimes like you just see it happening, and that's when you start believing it, because you're like, wait, this is easy now. I watched a podcast on I watched on YouTube with Jay Shetty and Jay Shetty and Dr. Joe Dispenza, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about manifesting and how like he's like, once you get used to it, it becomes very fun, because you like start seeing things happening, and you're like, okay, why would I think negative when now that I'm thinking positive, my life is better. So I think really the reason why maybe it's getting more popular is because people who are like influencers on social media, and like people who have a lot of following, and like people kind of look up to them in a way. They're seeing that like, oh my god, this girl has everything I want, and she's saying that it's because of manifesting, like I'm gonna do it, you know. So I think it's great that it's happening. I just want people to realize like it's not just about like getting that best car or like just wishing for like fun things. It's also just about the feeling, like I manifest to feel fulfilled. Like that's a good manifestation. So
Right. And like the reason that I used the example first of like me and what I was believing inside and how that manifested in relationships on both sides is because you're right, it's not all about the material things. Those are fun, those are exciting. Freaking manifest those too, right?
of course.
I think the most important thing is getting into your subconscious beliefs. And I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that a lot. It's all in the subconscious. I believe this so, so, so deeply. You know, like between the ages of 0 to 7, we're in a really interesting psychosocial state where we are literal sponges and we are taking in everything as reality. And it's all going into our subconscious. We're taking it all in. We're believing all of it. And we don't realize as we grow up that we took in all that stuff until we were 7, and now there are beliefs in our subconscious. That's why we do inner child work. That's why we do shadow work. That's why we look at our limiting beliefs, because we probably got some messed up beliefs during that time that aren't really ours, that don't really belong to us. And so when you change it at the subconscious level, which is really just recognizing, okay, what did I learn when I was in that subconscious sponge type of state? That's where the magic is, and you start to manifest different things. Yeah.
Sure. Well, because like for me, for example, like one time my sister and I share a bathroom, and we were like just like looking at ourselves. I don't know what we were doing there. I think we were cleaning or something, and I like looked at myself. I'm like, I look so ugly today, and it was just like a very typical thing you hear people saying. They don't think they're ugly, but like maybe in that moment they're like not feeling themselves or whatever. So I'm like, oh yeah, I look so ugly right now, whatever. Like I just said that, and she was reading the Four Agreements, the book, and so she was like super, you know, into it, and like obviously thinking about like the agreements people are doing every day, and she's like, Yorda, can you please like say beautiful like 10 times so that you can hopefully undo a little bit of like what you just made the agreement with, which was that you're ugly. Like, why are you saying that, you know? And it made me realize that like when I was younger, I always thought like, so basically what has changed, I love straight hair and like I straighten my hair sometimes, but like I have big curly hair, and I, you know, went through a phase in high school where I literally would like, I would take my straightener on the bus because I couldn't wake up way before the bus to do it. So, but I would bring it to school, and like a bunch of girls would be in the bathroom straightening their hair, and I would join them. And you know, even though I still like the straight look on myself, like nowadays I usually leave my hair like how it is, and that has helped me honestly like look in the mirror and be able to think I'm beautiful naturally, because my hair is like a big part of my look. Like ever since I was younger, I always had like really big hair. I started straining it all the time. I started to feel like that was like the beautiful that I was going for. And then like when I didn't have that, I like was missing something, because like, oh, how could I look good when I always want to straighten my hair to look good? So like I couldn't make that like I guess agreement at that time that I'm beautiful without the straight hair also. So like when she said that, I was like, wow, you know, now yes, I still say certain things that I should change, but like for me it took so many years of like straight up thinking that I couldn't be beautiful unless I was like all done up, which isn't true. You know, you can look beautiful naturally and then like look a different kind of beautiful when you aren't like it's totally, it can all exist. It's fun.
Yes. I love that so much, because that's a really good way to even talk about, I guess, manifestation, but also how important what we say is, right? Because if you're doing that act, I love that example. You're doing that act of straightening your hair every day so that you can feel good. You're reinforcing this belief that I'm not pretty without straight hair, right? Or like, there's so many small ways we do this, right? Like, for example, I'm working on my website right now, and there's going to be like all of this magical stuff on it, like courses and journals and so much stuff. I could have the belief of I won't be successful until my website's up. right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that once my website's up, there's so many opportunities for people to work with me, and it's going to be magical, which is true. But what isn't true, and what would be a faulty belief, is holding myself back, saying I will not be successful until my website's up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's little things like that that we don't always notice. Like, you didn't really know, right, when you were like, oh, I look so ugly today, how much you were saying, how much weight that held, right?
Exactly. No, for sure.
Yeah, it reinforces our beliefs, and you have to get self-aware, and you have to call yourself out. And I love what your sister said, right? Like, shift it. Like, if you're going to say that, then say I'm beautiful 10 times, right? And I even love little things like when I'm washing my face, I say things like, oh, I love my skin, oh, it's so clear, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like the littlest things, right? Or like when I'm doing yoga, I'm like, this is for my inner child. Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm feeling so safe. Like, I'm so safe, or I'm so strong. And just reinforcing different beliefs like that. It's so powerful. Yeah, what you say matters. It really does.
For sure. Because, like, we listen to what other people say a lot, and we don't realize that, like, what we're saying to ourselves in our head, even, is so much more important. And, like, it
Yes.
obviously other people's words affect you a lot, but I feel like once you, believe those positive things about yourself, it doesn't really matter if some random person thinks something negative. It's like, okay, cool, like, go on with your day. But if you have those beliefs already and someone reinforces them, you're like, okay, so, like, I do suck.
So true, right? Like, if you're already feeling like powerless, right? Like, you feel like you're so broken, you can't fix yourself. Two options. You could have someone who's coming up to you and continuously reinforcing that you are powerless. There's nothing you can do, right? You are broken. You're going to keep believing it. But if you have someone, same thing. If you have someone who comes up to you and says, no, you are so powerful. All of the power is within you. You are so capable of healing. You're not that far off. And they say it to you every single day. You might believe that one too. Right. And so it's powerful to notice, wow, like, maybe we believe this is kind of a weird example. Maybe we believe the sky is blue because everyone freaking tells us the sky is blue, right? And we're hearing it our whole life. We're just like, the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue. Maybe we're just like, yeah, sky is blue, right? But it's like, whatever you're hearing, and this is why the 0 to 7 matters so much, you're going to start believing it. Whatever's being reinforced over and over, you're going to believe it. It's like, repeating things in school when you have a teacher who's saying the same thing over and over so you get it in your head, right? That's how we work as humans. So shift that to your own relationship with yourself, right? What are you saying to yourself on a daily basis, right? What are you reinforcing to yourself on a daily basis? Because whatever you do each day, that makes your life. That's why a daily routine matters, right? Like, not to put so much pressure on it, but that's why it matters, because the habits and the things that you do daily, they shape you. That's your life, right? Your life is what you do on a daily basis. And yeah, and what you say matters a lot.
Definitely. I just wish, like, I mean, there will be, like, when, we have children and, like, they go to school, maybe there will be classes on, like, mindfulness and stuff. I just wish there was more, while we were growing up, because that would have made things a lot easier. But, we're learning, and I feel like even though the new generation, they're struggling with, like, other stuff for sure, and, like, technology is, like, a huge thing for them. Like, my brother plays video games all the time and, like, whatever. But I think that there's enough people kind of waking up and understanding things better, so that the new generation can hopefully, be impacted positively from a younger age, so they don't have to do all of this work afterwards. But
Yeah, I'm so with you. I mean, when I'm in like my negative head, I'm like, why did I get that childhood? Like, why couldn't I have
mhm,
like, a safe, stable childhood where like nothing bad happened to me? And like, why do I have to do all of this healing work? And you can get into that space, but usually you shift over into like, wow, this makes me so powerful, right? Like, this makes me who I am. This makes me understand things. This makes me have depth. And like, couldn't do the business I do. I couldn't coach girls if I didn't, have the reason that you said you connected to me is because partly because of my story and
Oh,
because of what I've been through, right?
for
And
sure.
so it makes this connection. But I have always wished that in school, we had more teachings on mindfulness and on self-love and on self-care, because I think it would change the world. But I see our generation especially as the reparenting generation. Like, we are all about breaking down generational wounds and traumas and not repeating the cycles, and we all see it. Most of our generation is like, oh, shit's been fucked. Or like, stuff is just wrong and messed up, and we can't keep letting that happen. We have to actually take initiative and change some things instead of just live blindly. And so it gives me a lot of hope.
Mm-hmm.
I think that our generation has a lot of awareness and is really powerful, and I agree with you. I think it'll change the kids that are coming, and how we parent them and how we treat them. Like, I have a little baby sister now. She's 3. She was born the day before Tanner and I met, and I almost didn't go to that party because of her birth. I know, crazy. And I am constantly like telling her affirmations. Like, I'm like, you are so loved, you are so safe, you are, so incredible, because I know how much of an impact that has. Even if she doesn't remember consciously, her subconscious will remember that, right? Yeah.
That's so sweet. She gets like daily, help.
Oh, she's gonna
I'm
love
crying. But I was gonna ask you about a little bit about like the people you meet, because I know a lot of times like I'm a very spiritual person, and like when I get to know people, like a lot of times it's hard for me to connect with them when they're not. However, I still feel that I can like have some sort of connection, because a lot of times what I have noticed is even the people who aren't really like thinking about, oh, I'm spiritual and like I think spiritually, they do things very spiritually and like with awareness, and they're very positive. So like, I don't say like, oh, well, just because you don't like know about this specific like spiritual activity, then you're not good enough for me. Like, that's not how I think of it. But I do notice that sometimes when someone kind of like has a resistance to spirituality because they're either like scared that it's like religious and like they don't want to, mess with that. So I notice that a lot of times I have resistance from those people, and like I feel like I can't connect to them well. So do you feel like, I know in California, a lot of people that I have met are just very aware and they kind of like see things differently than out here in the Midwest. But I'm sure you still encounter people who are kind of like, oh, like I just want to look good and like I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
Not to, like shun or judge anyone. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're not. I completely get what you're saying, right? Like, I'm deeply, deeply spiritual. It's a really sacred part of my life, right? It's a 24/7 type of part of my life. When you start to live really spiritually, that's your life. Like, that's the way that you perceive the world.
Mhm.
I actually have a lot of friends that aren't even close to the spirituality that I partake in, that maybe even don't even believe in God. I have a lot of friends like that. And I have a lot of friends who meet me right where I'm at, and we'll have, all the conversations about dreams and astrology and our feelings, and I can read cards with. And here's the thing, I've learned that there is no point, like 000 point, in trying to enforce my beliefs on anybody who isn't interested in believing them, right? So I have a lot of friends that aren't spiritual, and I'm not trying to get them to my side because I don't need them to be where I'm at, right? I can love them for all the other parts of them. All of my friends have depth and have been
Yeah.
so I think that's what helps me, is like, as long as we can get to that depthful spot, and you've gone through stuff in life and you've had to grow, and you can see that inside of me, that's enough for me. um and at certain points, like, it can be tricky, right? Like, I want to constantly talk about spirituality. That would feel really good, right? I want to have a lot of people like that in my life, but if I put on that persona of like, you have to match my beliefs for us to be friends, I really wouldn't have a lot of friends. And it's like, I think it's interesting because I love with all of my heart hearing other people's beliefs and trying to understand, why they believe what they believe. And I hope that people will give me that same grace. But I love listening to people who are atheists, and like, and trying to understand why they feel that way and accepting them for that and not judging. And when you're spiritual, something happens where when you wake up, you're like, everybody needs to know this. Like, this is magic. I need everybody to feel this and to know this and to experience this. And there are people, and even my friends, there are people who aren't looking for that right now, and they don't want to do that right now. They're on their journey, they're on their path. It's no better, no less than. They're just on their path. So you would be wasting a lot of energy trying to get skeptics to see your point and to believe your point, right? And so it's always been really important to me that I don't do that. And I just live my life and have my energy, and a lot of people compliment me on my energy. Even people who aren't spiritual, they're like, there's something about you, and there's something about your energy that everybody can feel. And these people aren't necessarily spiritual people. So I see it more as I come with all of me, my big pink sparkly freaking aura, and I send light to other people, and I am who I am, and people will experience it. And then if someone does want to explore spirituality, they'll probably come to me, and they'll probably ask me about it, and then I'll be excited to tell them everything. But yeah, I love having friends of all walks of life. And of course there's people I don't jive with. I can't get with like surface level. I just can't do it. I can't have those. I'm like you with that. It's draining for me. So as long as you got some depth,
Oh yeah.
you can have your own beliefs, I got you.
Yeah, I feel like that's
I
the
hope
most
that answered it.
Oh, it was perfect. That's like kind of want that's what I wanted you to talk about because like, I also have a lot of friends who aren't spiritual, and the only people that I can't, you know, relate to or can't really spend my time with is people who kind of like judge it or will like, when I like one time I had a situation where this girl really hurt me, and I don't know what got into me, but I just like took on like my highest self persona and somehow like did not yell at her. I didn't raise my voice or anything or like make her feel bad about herself or anything. I was just like, what you did like really hurt me. And what I would suggest is you go find yourself because this isn't like what you would do if you were like truly in line with like yourself. Cause I really loved her as a person. And she walked away and was like, oh, like you and your hippie stuff or whatever she said. And actually, like months later, she and I talked on the phone, and I told her like, I forgive you even if we're not a part of each other's life. Like I still forgive you, and I kind of recognize that maybe that wasn't a good part of your life, that you were able to kind of like do something hurtful. And she said, even though you said to me that, or even though I said to you to go away with your hippie stuff, like what you said in that statement actually made me like go and quote unquote find myself because I really wasn't there. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, and I that kind of is what I was reminded of when you were talking about how like someone really like your impact can be really great on someone that they want to kind of explore what you're doing because they're like, wow, like I love how she handles it, or I love how she comes into a room and everyone's like excited to see her because they feel the love in your case, so I 100% agree with you. I think that's awesome.
Like, how freaking cool is that, right? Like, you didn't impose anything on her, right? You weren't telling her she was
no,
or that there was something that was off in her. You were just like, maybe it'd be nice to go explore yourself a little bit because this doesn't feel like it's you, right? And like, I have to do that a lot in my life, right? Like I need I need the same respect that I'm putting in all of my friendships, right? And I need that same grace and the same love and understanding. And so there are people that I have to disconnect from when we're not getting that. And it's never this like less than or better than thing. Right? It's just like, oh, that, that's crossing some boundaries, or that doesn't feel right to me, and that's not going to work. And like, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Like it's beautiful to have friends of all walks of life, and then those friends that, maybe like super against spirituality, like who knows, like maybe one day they're going to be like, they'll remember you and they'll need you, and maybe they never will, but you still got a beautiful friendship out of that space. I mean, it's a really good question, because I think a lot of spiritual people struggle with this, right? Like, in my relationship, like I'm totally the more spiritual one, right? Tanner's spiritual, however, he's really grounding, and he really grounds me, and he reminds me like, hey, come to earth, right? Like, be here on earth. And like, for example, like he doesn't love astrology, but I'm super curious about it right now, and that's okay, right? Like, we're in a relationship, and like there's this one thing that maybe he doesn't, see the same way I do, and I still adore him and I still love him because he can respect and support my interest in astrology. And, but he has that grounding, incredible energy about him and his form of spirituality, where it reminds me, like, because I'm an Aquarius, I'm up here. Like, I am not here on earth, right? Like, I could live in my dream world all the time if I wanted to. And, sometimes you need the people who aren't spiritual to remind you to stay on earth, because we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We're supposed to be human, right? We're supposed to learn the footwork of what it means to be here on earth. And so we got to have human friends. I see it that way. I'm like, I have my fairy friends, I have my angels, and I got my humans, and they're all important.
You are absolutely right. I feel like sometimes because I'm a Pisces, and like I've always been a dreamer. Like that is just everyone in my life. Like even before I even got into astrology at all, I do want to learn even more about it. But as of right now, I'm like, I totally see like why I have some of the qualities I have. But even in the past, when I didn't know anything about it, I was always like the one in the group that was just like, like in the air, kind of like. I mean, I'd rather, with like my personality, like just my way of being, I'd rather be that way, because it just kind of helps me like stay alive, like when I'm not super serious. However, I do, like you said, I do appreciate the people that do keep me grounded and kind of remind me that like, okay, not everything works out the way it's working out in your fairy tale land.
Both are important. There's something to learn in both spaces, and like, I just think as spiritual people, it's all the more reason to have both types of friends, to have the spiritual people who will dream with you and meet you where you're at and see what you see. And it's also really, really, really important to have those who don't agree with you, right? As long as they're respectful to you as a person, it's nice to have people who challenge you. I've always felt that way. I like to be challenged.
Me too. I was gonna say, like, even on social media, I do appreciate the people that like will read my stories and be like, hey, actually, like, I saw something about this other fact that might kind of contradict what you're saying, and I'm like, oh, thank you, like, tell me more. The only thing I don't like is like negative comments, or for example, like someone recently was like, you are down the rabbit hole and there's no getting you out, because I'm like talking about something like a conspiracy theory. I don't know what it was, but that's the type of stuff that I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I did not get anything out of that, and you got nothing out of saying it. So that's when it becomes like just pure negativity. But
well, that's good, because that's what I meant about like, I'm not gonna try to force the belief of spirituality on people who don't want to believe it. They're gonna be stuck there. So if someone is like an atheist, but I really like them, right? And they're explaining to me all of the reasons that they don't believe in God, well, I'm not going to get swayed because of that, right? And so I'm standing in my belief, and I know my belief, and I can respect them for their opinion and their belief, but I'm probably not going to try to describe mine, because I can see that in that moment I would be wasting some energy, because that person isn't going to try to hear me, right? They just want their own belief. But I think what's so powerful, and not just with spirituality, but just in life, is, appreciating that we have different beliefs and we have different opinions. And there's a human part in all of us that has nothing to do with our opinions or our beliefs. And that's what we can zone in on, right? And like, I can, it's being able to have your beliefs and your opinions and sit with someone who has separate beliefs and opinion, and accept them. And I think it's tricky to do that, but it's powerful to do that.
For sure. There's so much more to offer, in a conversation than just your beliefs and opinions. So I think you're right. It's like kind of just also though a lot of times what comes from like wanting to contradict is like, if you feel insecure about your belief, or you're like, I'm so upset that not enough people believe this, which it comes like with spirituality, like you said, once you figure stuff out, you're like, I need to tell the world, like I want to just like yell at everyone and say they're doing everything wrong. But yeah, that really does no good. Even now, like on social media, everyone's like worried about saying like, oh, I hate people who don't do this. Like, how can you be so selfish to do that? And it's like, honestly, like just realize that everyone has their own like reasoning behind doing certain things. So you sitting on Facebook like blaming them is not gonna do it. It's just, even though I do that sometimes, I'm like, guys, read about this, but it's just about that intention of like, I'm not trying to yell at you. It's just more like, hey, read this. Like, I'm gonna leave it here.
To decide to subscribe to my belief for us to get along, right? It's like that. It's like, yeah. It's like, I feel like you said, it's an insecurity, right? So I'm like, I feel strong enough in my beliefs and my experience with spirituality and my experience with self-love that I'm good as I am, right? I don't need to battle it. I don't want to debate it. Why would I debate it? Why would I try to prove it to anybody? I already know my truth, right? Yeah. And truth is relative. Everybody has a different truth, right? And I think when we realize that the truth is relative to each person's like individual experience, we have a little bit more compassion of why some people may have their own truths. And yeah.
That's very good. My next question is about your authenticity on social media, because like I said, you were one of the first people that I was able to connect with on there. And I also like, because I was able to see how positive it can be, I started to realize more and more, and nowadays I'm like super open about everything as well, and I'm like, here's my story, but even from the beginning I was just like really moved by this idea that, if you can share all your positives and you can share like, oh, look how beautiful I am, then you should be able to, share your darkness, because there's little girls on there who are looking at your stuff and like being super in awe at everything you're doing, everything you are, that, the way I see it, I'm like, if I want, or not want, if I know that there's girls out there on my page, not just girls, but like specifically, I just love girls. I can connect with them, but there's some little girl looking at my stuff and being like, oh my God, like she went on this vacation, or like, oh my God, her hair looks so pretty. Like, I want them to be able to see like, oh my God, 2 years ago this happened, like, and she was able to pick herself back up. Wow, like I don't feel so sad, because maybe one day I'll be there too. So I want to thank you for being that person for me, but also I wanted to ask like where that came from, because I know it's really hard.
Oh, beautiful. Such a good question. Yes. It's like how do I want to explain this? Okay, so part of my work, right, is helping girls transform, right, from darkness into like light. And to be able to do that work, people have to know that I've been there and gotten onto the other side, right? I'm not a 40-year-old therapist that went to school just to learn the facts and then spit them back out to you.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a 20-year-old girl who's literally been where you are. I just got to the other side, and I want to show you that you can get there too. So that is my motivation behind being so vulnerable and authentic on social media and telling really crazy stories, right? Telling difficult stories and crying at times, and making sure people know that it's not all fun and light and bubbly all of the time, right? Like there's real stuff too. And my motivation is because I want people to know that they can have that also, right? And that it's possible and that it's not this unattainable thing. And at times it can be tricky, right? There's like, at times it can be hard to be vulnerable, but the biggest thing I've learned, and I say this all the time, is that vulnerability creates vulnerability. So when you show up with your vulnerability and you show people the real stuff and you tell a painful story, other people feel safe to be vulnerable too. And they feel lovable and safe in their mess also, right? Like, I always tell personal stories in coaching, always. And every one of my girls will tell you that it makes them feel so safe because I'm never judging. Because they tell me something that, you know, they have shame about or they're working on. And I'm like, me too, been there, done that, right? Like, I totally get it. And like, explain my experience with that, because that's how people learn to believe in themselves. That's how people see that, like, I didn't freaking take a magic pill. I'm a real person, right? Like, I do real work. Um and then also, like, maybe the last thing I'll say about it is, you know, social media is a highlight reel, and we do have to be aware of that. We have to be aware of the story we're telling. And I want to share positivity because I do live a positive life, right? Like, I want to make sure that my page is a positive space to come to and real. And you know, I think there's like really toxic, messy, sad things when it comes to like face tuning and you know, some of just the false stuff that happens on social media. And so I do feel a little bit of a responsibility to be as real as I can for the young girls, also for the young people, and so that we don't create these like false ideas of what life has to look like. And I think that's it. I think that's really my motivation behind doing that. Yeah.
No, it's really true. You know, when you said that it's not like you just went to school, got the grades and the all that for it. You
Right.
really went through the motions and like actually dove deep, which I like you have helped me more. Literally, I took one webinar, which I'm gonna do more for sure. But I did one, and like I want to stress that because I literally did one. I've gone to so many therapists. I've done so much work, and like that was one of the most helpful. And
Thank you. What a beautiful, beautiful thing to say. Yeah. I mean, like, it's personability, you know, like a lot of my girls, like, there's this energy of like, I'm just your friend, right? Like, I'm your friend that learned a little bit more, right? That just has, like, I call it earth school. I went through earth school. Right? Like, my life is my school, and I'm just giving back what I've learned. Um and it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing.
my last question would be like to share maybe 3 goals you have coming up here to kind of show like what your thought process goes or how your thought process is when you're kind of setting goals for yourself and you know kind of just set or to end on a positive note.
I love that question. What a great question. 3 goals. Let's see. So one of my biggest goals right now is to, you know, build my business in a way where I can help people as much as I possibly can, but also so that I can live an abundant life, and then, you know, let that pour over into other people. And it's a really big goal that I'm working on right now. And, you know, I just want to grow in that area. Another goal is just to continuously like let go of those old stories, and, you know, not let them paint my present, and continue to really be in my fullest, truest self. And you have to grow on that every single day. And gosh, I think those are my 2 biggest goals right now. A little one is I want to finish my website because I'm really excited about it.
So excited to see it. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. This was very uplifting for me. It was like a therapy in its own. But what's your last little note or comment that you want to give?
I would just say I'd like to leave everybody with, you know, your soul doesn't want band-aids, it wants you. And so, you know, let go of going outside of you, whether it's people or places or drugs and alcohol, to try to fill, you know, those pains and those voids that are inside of you. Because the second that you turn inward and you give attention to yourself is the moment that everything starts healing. And I really want to leave everybody with that message, knowing that, you know, you can fill up your cup and you can fill up those voids and you can become whole on your own. And, you know, I just invite everyone to come hang out with me. My Instagram is like my hub. I do a lot of stuff on there, and, you know, I'd love to have you there and see you there. And thank you so much for having me. It was so, so, so cool.
Yes, this was amazing. Thank you. I'm so excited to see how it turns
Me too.
out. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
I love you so much.